Hello and welcome to In Conversation. I'm your host, James Campbell, and today I'm joined by two esteemed guests, Drs. Tom Ue and Dr. Jamie Bernthal, the new editors of Book 2.0, an exciting and thought-provoking journal published by Intellect. We're going to be diving into their vision for the journal, we're going to discuss some key themes, and we're also going to ask what the future holds for them and for Book 2.0, as well as getting to know them both beyond the academic world. So Tom, Jamie, welcome to the podcast. It's wonderful to have you both on. And thank you both very much for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Wonderful. Well, look, let me start by asking you both a simple question. And I'll go to you first, Tom. Where are you calling in from?
I am in Sydney in Nova Scotia in Canada.
And how's things up there today? Cold, I'm imagining.
It's warming up a little. It's warming up a fair bit. Yeah.
Okay, I imagine the weather allows you plenty of time to be writing indoors, though, especially at different times of the year. And Jamie, how about yourself? Where are you calling in from?
I'm in Suffolk, in the east of England.
Okay, and I'm in Tucson, down in the deserts of the southwest of the United States. So the three of us are coming in from three different geographic locations, that's for sure. So thanks to technology as well as to both of you for being here today. It's really wonderful to have you both on, and I'm really interested in to hear what you've got to say. But before we talk about the journal, could you maybe tell us a little bit about your current roles and institutions? Again, Tom, I'll go to you first. So where are you? I know where you're calling in from, but where are you based, and what's your kind of current role?
Sure. So I'm the assistant professor in English of the long 19th century here at Cape Breton University. And I specialize on really most literatures from about 1770 to the First World War, the end of the First World War. And so I cover romantic poetry, prose, fiction, Victorian prose fiction, as well as poetry and modernism.
Thanks, Tom. Quite a range. And how about you, Jamie?
I wear many hats, but I am a visiting fellow in creative writing at the University of Suffolk, the UK version. My specialisms are in crime fiction of the 20th century, particularly Agatha Christie, and gender and sexuality.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it sounds like you both teach a range of different kind of texts. Are there any kind of favorite texts that you're most enjoying teaching at the moment? Jamie, I'll go to you with that one.
Well, oddly, I quite like teaching texts that people don't like and then seeing them come to like them. So, for example, teaching something like Harold Pinter to first year undergraduates.
Yeah.
And then if you do it well and people respond well, and they're very, very smart. All the undergraduates are always so smart and ready to engage once they've got past that fear of the text, then suddenly they're swearing blind that it's always been their favorite work of literature. So I like that sort of thing to teach.
Yeah, no, that's a really good example. I imagine that you get quite a lot of, you must get a lot of interest from the students once you kind of engage them like that. And Tom, what about yourself? Is there a particular text that you really like to teach at the moment?
I love teaching Frankenstein. I think it's a great point of entry for historical fiction. It engages with so many issues that we deal with on a fairly day-to-day basis. I think it's also a great text for 18-year-olds as they're embarking and in some cases, and especially if they're first-generation students in a university environment, they're being exposed to this really wonderful text that's like an earth text for science fiction that addresses so many ethical issues and that can resonate with students in so many different ways.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I can see that myself. Speaking about texts, though, let's jump into Book 2.0, which of course is an international peer-reviewed journal published by Intellect. It's been around I think since 2010. So we're quite been around quite a while now. But I know you both have been involved for some time, but you've obviously taken over, or you're in the position, in the process of transitioning to be on the editorial team. So I want to talk a bit about your vision and things like that. But for those unfamiliar with Book 2.0, can you maybe just give us a general overview? Sort of tell us a bit perhaps about what the aims and scopes are for the journal, and like what kind of are the main topics that it would cover. Tom, did you want to take that one?
Sure. So book 2.0 is exactly what it sounds like. It's about books, it's about book production, it's about book art, as well as the interrelations between all of these things. So we are interested not just in a material that's in the text, but we're interested in the text itself as a form of art. We're interested in how books are disseminated, how ebooks have in some ways not quite taken over, but I'll defer to James on this regarding stats and the like. So we're interested in all sorts of things relating to book production as well as book art. Some of my favorite things to talk about is really pop-up books. It's something that they're one of the species that's really stayed with us for a long time.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, because I guess thinking back to my youth, and I mean my very early youth, my favorite books would have all been pop-up books, and they were always like the books that you were all fighting for in the library, in the kids section. Yeah. Oh no, that one's out. So yeah, I can feel that pop-up books. Yeah, that's really interesting to think about the range of topics that opens up. Jamie, is there anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, well, I think Tom summarized it really well. I'd say we're about what makes a book, if that makes sense. So we're about all those elements of a book. So yes, about the literary element, but also about the physicality, about the production and the work that goes into a book. Also, the interpretation of what a book is, what an author is, what a reader or a story is. So we're taking a very holistic look at the concept of books, which has never, to me, felt more relevant at the moment.
Yeah, I love that. It's a really nice way of thinking about it, that holistic approach. And what about audience? Like, let's talk about audience from two perspectives here. What's the intended readership for this publication? And then let's talk a bit after that about maybe who you're trying to encourage to submit to the journal too. Like, Tom, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that, readers who are interested not just in the content of books, but also in the physicality of a book, as well as how a book is being put together, would find a lot to enjoy in this journal. And I use the word enjoy more liberally, because I think that there's a lot that we can gain out of good scholarship that isn't just about information. It's also about, the enjoyability of reading a text, which our predecessor, Meg Gower, has done an amazing job with over the years.
Jamie, what about you? Do you have any thoughts on that, or who do you with contributions? Is it solely scholars, or are we looking at authors, poets, and practitioners, and writers, and other people involved in the book industry, or is it more of a scholarly perspective?
Absolutely, it's a broad perspective. What we go for is the importance of the insights and what's really saying something new and timely. So we have scholarship, of course, and interviews. We talk to people who actually work in the world of books, whether that's writing or illustrating or in the production of books, and of course also creative content as well. So it's probably a more holistic approach than a lot of other journals as well, I'd say, in that sense as well.
And Tom, you just mentioned your kind of predecessor. What kind of topics have they focused on up to this point? Are there any things that kind of drew you to the journal, and what makes it sort of a really strong publication at this point of transition into your own editorship?
I mean, Meg is such a learned man. He's interested in so many different things. He also has so many different expertises and different careers relating to book and book production. So he has worked on children's books. He's a poet, and so with this journal, we do hope to build on these strengths. We don't want to necessarily discard any of these traditional strengths of this journal, and we want to cultivate them as well as to steer them in new directions.
Well, since its founding in 2010, Book 2.0 has covered a diverse range of topics. You've just highlighted a few there, like children's literature, oral storytelling, poetry, publishing, and of course, Indigenous language preservation, which is something I'd like to get into as well. But what are your plans moving the journal forward, like especially in light of this is a topic which is most fascinating to me because it's, obviously as a publisher's perspective, but what we consider a book is ever evolving and changing, and of course technology has made that more rapid. But then at the same time, people were predicting the end of the printed book 15 years ago or something like that, and I remember when ebooks reached 30% of all of our sales, and then we're like, oh, this is going to be 90% within a few years, and of course that never happened, and we never got anywhere near that, especially not with individuals. And of course you go to a beach and you used to see a lot of Kindles, and now you're seeing a lot of trade paperbacks again. So it's interesting how these things come in ebbs and flows. But Jamie, let me jump to you first of all with this. What's the kind of vision for the future, and is there anything you'd like to say about what you're going to I guess push forward with your own vision for the journal?
Well, yeah, as Tom has said, Mick Gower has done astonishing work on the journal in the last 15 years, and we want to preserve and build on that. We're also really interested in some of the conversations that are happening now and that we can see happening going forward. So our first issue is themed around the concept of authorship, what makes an author, and the idea there is that does link in with quite a lot of the conversations happening around AI, around social media, and that impact on text and how it's received, how it's understood. And then my horrible theory mind, which gets me into so much trouble, goes back to the death of the author and how we probably need to revisit that and that side of things. So there's a lot of questions. I think fundamentally there's a shift going on that everyone is still trying to work out what it represents, a shift in how we make, read, and create books. And so we're there to navigate that.
I mean, that is highly pertinent, to say the least. And I'm really glad that we're publishing this journal, because I could do with a few of those insights myself. So looking forward to reading the next issue, that's for sure. Tom, I mean, how does that line up with your own vision? What else, would you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Jamie's summed it up quite well. Like, we're really interested in investigating these directions as they are unfolding in real time. And I think that's what makes a journal, because we're not a book, we're not an edited collection, we are a dynamic, robust machinery that produces scholarship, and that really is engaged in this conversation as it's happening.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, we at Intellect love journals. We have 108 of them, and we're probably best known as a journal publisher. Although of course we do publish a wide variety of books, including some of yours, Tom. But yeah, the journal is such a fascinating format in itself, and especially, as a lot of companies and publishers are selling or divesting themselves of their journals, or they're creating, I guess, different ways of disseminating that information through larger online encyclopedias and things of that nature. I'm really glad that we're still able to publish proper peer-reviewed journals that come out between 2 and 4 times a year, and you can get a print version if you want, but obviously predominantly people are now accessing that online. But it's not so dissimilar to the way that I accessed that information when I was a student many moons ago. So it is always interesting to think about the journal in its own context alongside books and things too. Will you be reflecting upon journals at all in the journal, if that makes sense, that form of dissemination?
I think so, because books themselves have been changing dramatically. So we're seeing shorter and shorter monographs, but that has really been a wage for about the last 2 or 3 years. So from the traditional monograph of about 70 to 80,000 words, we're seeing a lot more shorter books, so like 15 to 30,000 words or so. And so these items are quite different from articles per se, but they're also not entirely monographs. And so we are thinking a lot about all of these different categories as we move forward.
Excellent. Okay. Well, and let's talk a bit more about moving forward in terms of call for papers as well. I know the journal, for example, it always has a general call up and out. And if anyone's interested, they can go to www.intellectbooks.com, search for book 2.0, and then you can find all the information about the editorial boards. You can see all the abstracts of the previously published articles. You can also use that to subscribe, or if you're a librarian, you can get your library to subscribe, of course. But you can download a free issue and access any open access content there as well. So that's a really good resource for anyone who wants to find out a little bit more. But you'll, of course, also find themed, tailored special issues housed there as well. So I was just wondering, do you have any exciting topics? I noticed you mentioned, Jamie, the first issue is kind of focusing on authorship. Maybe you'd like to just pick that up there. I mean, beyond authorship, are there any other special issues that you guys have planned?
There are. And I would say watch this space on that.
Oh, okay.
We're looking at very timely conversations, and we want to maximize the reach of those.
Right. Tom, anything to add to that?
I mean, I'll just echo Jamie, and also like to our audiences, if you're interested in proposing an issue, or if you want to chat with us, Jamie and I would be very happy to respond to your queries and to meet with you regarding anything that interests you and that you think you would like to see in a journal.
Well, following on from that, then, let me just say that, obviously we're in an evolving publishing landscape. Why is this journal particularly important? What makes it unique, and why should, colleagues in the field come and submit to you or to propose a special themed issue with this publication? Maybe, Tom, you could follow on from your past comment on that one.
I mean, there are many reasons why you want to publish with us, including the fact that we think a lot about article types. So, for example, traditionally in an academic journal, we will see articles, we might see an occasional op-ed, and we'll likely see a lot of reviews. But then when it comes to discussing a book, it often is the case that the best way to think about that book or a series of books is really through things like interviews, where we interview series editors or book designers and have them talk about the different decisions that they have to make when it comes to producing a book or a series of books. We don't all have access to everything that we want, and we can't produce, we can't produce a book that completely identifies with all of our needs and wants. So rather than having reviews, or in addition to having reviews of books, we do a lot of different article types like interviews, and we think a lot about the specific type of article that would fit the topic, as well as the kinds of conversations that we want to be engaged with.
And I like thanks for making note there that obviously you're in communication with designers and practitioners and people who crafts people, that kind of thing, who work within the book trade, let's say, for want of a better term. And I think that's really important, to connect academia with the publishing industry and the general book industry beyond that. I think that's a really important facet of this publication as well. We're not in the ivory tower. We want this to be very inclusive across the board. Let me just follow on from that, though, thinking a bit about libraries and the difficult questions that they're being asked, that they're facing, because we are operating again in an evolving publishing landscape, but also in a very difficult marketplace for subscription-based products, for journals, and libraries are struggling to maintain their collections, and of course to add new items, new subscription products. And of course, it's maybe easy to buy a book, a one-off. They can say, well, that's going to be $50 or $150 or pounds, whatever it might be, and that's a one-off cost. But with a subscription thing, they're under more pressure, because year in, year out, they're going to have to maintain that, or they're going to have to get rid of something from the collection to bring in new content. Difficult question, guys, but with that in mind, what would you say to a librarian? Like, why is there a need for this journal in the collection?
This is a journal that has a holistic view of the book and of scholarship, and is something that has a bit of all those different areas in. So it's, when you're taking out a subscription to this journal, you are taking out and unlocking insight into all these different facets, not just of academia, of scholarship, but also of industry and those professional skills that people are learning. And so you're finding out what books mean, and you're finding deep and significant importance in something that is not going away from society. Books and reading are a cornerstone of any culture.
Well, bravo, Jamie. That was a difficult question. Well answered. So yeah, thank you very much for your thoughts on that. And again, I think that's really important, because it doesn't matter if you're going to be like an academic. This journal has a huge amount of relevance for people who are going to become book designers or are going to work in any creative industry. So yeah, I think well put. Tom, anything to add to that?
We've been talking a lot about how our journal speaks to, as well as how it reflects upon changes in the publishing industry, but I also see it as a mechanism for initiating changes in the industry, which is something that we should be doing, especially now that we've been hearing that the humanities are in a crisis, but that's been pretty much been all my entire career. I've been hearing this for over 15 years now, and yet, we're still alive and well. So, instead of just thinking about how our journal or our scholarship reflects upon the current state of things, we should be imagining what we could be doing with the material book and what we can be doing in terms of publishing. So I'd like to keep that in view.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate those answers to what was actually a pretty tricky question. And also, neither of you are responsible for selling this journal to librarians. That unfortunately falls under my remit. But I really appreciate your insights. And I think that's just, important that we communicate with our library community as well as to, potential contributors too. I've got one more question I want to ask you, and then we're going to move on to a few quickfire questions. But the last question I wanted to focus on was that the journal has kind of historically had a strong focus on Indigenous speakers and endangered languages. And I recently went to a conference where the keynotes were Maori scholars, and they were talking about their language and their fears for the future and the fight to maintain what they consider an endangered language. And it was really, really fascinating to me. So I just wanted to ask what your kind of what your awareness of that is, or what your goals are, and can you expand on that aspect of the journal and its sort of significance to you moving forward?
I mean, we are always learning about new cultures, both and in Sydney in particular, where we have a mix of different cultures, as well as different Indigenous communities locally. So I'm in a process of learning about this, and I don't think that process is ever going to end. And I hope that will be reflected in our journal too, as we move forward.
Excellent. And Jamie, any thoughts on that topic of like Indigenous speakers and endangered languages?
Yeah, I'd say it's important to continue that learning and those conversations. And it's part of that holistic approach to language, which is what storytelling is, which is what books come from. So hugely important. Yeah.
Great. And that's a really important point again. But I guess this is another good opportunity for us to say that anyone who represents those cultures or languages, this would be a great forum for them to submit their own work, to to speak truth to power, and to voice themselves, of course. So this would be a really good forum for that, wouldn't it? I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, let's ask some slightly fun quickfire questions. So you guys are ready? I know I haven't given you much chance to think about these, so here we go. I'm going to start with you, Tom.
Yeah.
What book has had the greatest impact on your life?
Frankenstein.
Boom. All right. We return to the start. And Jamie, what about you? What books had the greatest impact on your life?
Lord Edgware Dies by Agatha Christie.
I mean, I know it. I haven't read it, so I'm gonna have to add that to the list. He says to an Agatha Christie specialist, so I don't want to get into trouble here, but I should have read that at some point in my life. But that's on the list from today. Jamie, I'll follow up with you. What was your favorite childhood literary character?
Well, I'd say the one I most identified with would be Matilda from Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl's Matilda.
Yeah, I think mine might be Mr. Twit. No, I think Matilda. That's a good shout. Tom, how about you?
Sherlock Holmes.
Sorry, say that again. I missed that.
Sherlock Holmes.
Of course, that makes sense. Of course, we did publish a wonderful book with you on Sherlock Holmes a few years back as well, so I'll do a shameless plug for both of us. But yeah, the Fan Phenomena book, part of the Fan Phenomena series that you did on Sherlock Holmes was really wonderful. So if anyone wants to get a bit more of insight from Tom on Sherlock Holmes, that's a good place to take a look, I'd say. Now, Jamie, you mentioned earlier on that you're a bit of a sucker for literary theory, I think, or like you certainly alluded
Is there
to
a
it.
test coming?
No, thank God, no. I think it's a test I might fail, although I did study a bit this at some point myself. But what literary theory or kind of system of ideas has most influenced your own thinking or your own work?
Well, it's a cheat, but queer theory, because that scavenges from everything and it's so multivalent and messy. Just like me, I love it.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good answer, actually. Tom, how about yourself?
Formalism. So Caroline Levine's work, and she's going to be featured in one of our upcoming issues of Book 2.0.
Oh, wow, awesome. Oh, that's another excellent shameless plug. Thank you very much for that one.
Working on it.
And going to mix it up a little bit now. So you're hosting a dinner party, Tom.
Yep.
You can invite 5 guests. They can be dead or alive, or I should say, they can be people who we can reanimate. Who's making the list for you? Who's coming to the dinner party?
Oscar Wilde, Shakespeare, Alfred Hitchcock, Meryl Streep, and I think I should say Kate Blanchett, because somewhere I did say that I would wish that she could play me at some point, because I think
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's an awesome list. I was thinking, is this all going to be male kind of authors, and then I'm throwing in some excellent sort of female. So that's but yeah, you throw me off there a bit, because we did a Q&A for a publication a while back, and you did say, I said, who would play you in the biography, the biopic of Tom Ue's life, and you did say Kate Blanchett. So yeah, that's cool. All right, well, let's move on to Jamie. How about you? Who would be on the dinner? Who would be on the list for your dinner party?
Well, Oscar Wilde, obviously. I think probably most people say Oscar Wilde. I'd have to have Agatha Christie, because I'm obsessed with her. Arthur Conan Doyle.
Oh yeah.
Because as a spiritualist, he can contact any dead people I haven't thought to invite.
Very good.
I bring Iris Murdoch, because the novelist and philosopher, because I think people don't realize how fun she was.
Right.
And Tom, so that we could observe these people and discuss the next issue of Book 2.0.
An excellent shameless plug again, and that sounds like another wonderful list of characters and greats to have at any kind of dinner party. I feel like this could turn into a really interesting whodunit as well. That definitely could be something that might come out of this dinner party, depending on how all the guests get on. So you might have some interesting observations to make. That's for sure. This question follows on quite nicely from that. Again, just another kind of simple one, but what's your favorite cuisine, Tom?
Probably Korean food.
Korean food, yeah, good shout. Okay, and would you be responsible for cooking the Korean food at the dinner party? No.
As I tell my column, like, I tend to microwave things to completion. So like, no, you don't want me in a cooking scene at all.
So a classic academic. Definitely knows the way around a kettle and a microwave, but maybe not chef in the pots. And Jamie, what about yourself? Is there a particular cuisine that you like, or do you cook much?
Coffee.
Or anything? Okay,
Coffee is my only cuisine.
Okay, yeah, I can. But this time in the day, I think it's definitely my only cuisine as well. But all right, that's a good answer. And just to go a little bit tangential from that, I recently was in New York for a couple of weeks with work, and I had the fortune of visiting a lot of my old favorite museums and a few other new ones that I didn't have the time to previously. And it made me think, do you guys have any favorite museums that you would love returning to, or that that just really stick out to you? Tom?
I just left the Smithsonian Museums in Washington, but
oh, wow,
in terms of favorite spots, I would have to say the Ashmolean at Oxford.
Okay, yeah, wonderful spot. And how about you, Jamie? Any favorite museums out there?
To be perfectly honest, the thing I like about museums is being there and watching the people there and seeing how they interact with the things. And so any museum at that point, or nearly any museum, is my favorite museum. Also, as a millennial and as someone who researched through the COVID pandemic, the National Archives and the Internet Archive were massively useful. If they count as museums, which
we can throw them in there. They can get a wild card, especially with that context. I think that's really interesting. I think one of the reasons why museums have such a strong place in my heart at the moment is partly because of the COVID years, but then also having lived in cities like New York off and on throughout my life, you become accustomed to having all these things on your doorstep. And I only wish that maybe I'd taken more advantage of having all of these things on my doorstep. We have wonderful museums here in Tucson, Arizona, but you don't have that access to antiquity or quite so much international art or historical sort of artifacts and things. So online resources and archives have become increasingly important for me, especially in the post-pandemic landscape. So great answers, thank you very much for that. And I just wanted to say as well, I know you're both obviously into different kind of texts, not only kind of things that would be important to the journal. So I was wondering whether you were going on a day or maybe a solo mission on your own, theatre or cinema. Tom, what's your pick?
I would say the symphony, because I just came back from Washington D.C. and I was at a wonderful production of Manfred from the National Symphony Orchestra, and I love Tchaikovsky, but Manfred is not really one of my top Tchaikovsky works, but this worked really well. It was conducted by Vasily Petrenko, and it was just wonderful.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess if anyone's around and has opportunity, that sounds like one to check out if it's still ongoing. Anyway,
it's gone, but you can get YouTube recordings with different symphony orchestras conducted by Vasily.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Tom. And Jamie, what about yourself? Are you kind of theatre, symphony, opera, cinema? What's your go-to?
Well, I mean, opera counts as theatre, doesn't it? So I'd say theatre over cinema, although both fabulous, of course. I just find something absolutely fascinating about humanity, shared experience in that sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'd always say cinema's been my number one, but again, having, I guess, fewer opportunities to attend theatrical performances. Just more recently when I have seen them, they've had a much greater impact on me, and it's that humanity, that, oh my God, like the physicality of it, and like how powerful the performance can be. Not all, but most, it's particularly pertinent. And I did actually have the fortune of going to see Sunset Boulevard on Broadway the other week, so that was a real treat. And if anyone's around and has a burning pile of cash in their pocket, I'd recommend that's a good one to go and see. It's a bit harder to get the cheap seats these days, but I did get good seats. But you certainly have to save up sometimes for some of these performances, but they're always worth supporting. That's my take on it. Well, thank you both for those answers. And I just come into my final question for the day, really. Beyond Book 2.0, what other projects are you currently working on? And Tom, I'll go to you first on that one.
So I'm writing a book about Superman's son, John Kent, at the moment, and that's going to be due in December. Basically, my life for the next year or so will be dominated by comics, and that's been a really interesting learning curve for me, but also a very good one.
Excellent. Okay, that's very cool. And how about yourself, Jamie?
I actually am working on a top secret thing I can't tell you about, but
okay.
It is super exciting. It might be out in the world by the time this goes out, and it's pertinent to some of the stuff we've been talking about. I'm also editing a new edition of an old crime novel for Oxford University Press.
Oh, very cool. Oh, well, interesting. Well, you both certainly have your fingers in many different pies, and I'm familiar with both your scholarship, and I'm really glad to be working with you both. And it has been an absolute pleasure having you both in conversation today. Thank you for joining us for this fine episode of the podcast. Any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to say before we finish for the day?
We just, in general, we just love to hear from our audiences, whether it is, the casual reader of book 2.0, or really anyone who is interested in books. They are most welcome to reach out to us, and we would love to talk to them.
Well, I would say, in addition to that, then one of the best ways to do that is to go to intellectbooks.com, search for book 2.0, familiarize yourself with the topics, the content. There's quite a lot of free material there. And then you, of course, can reach out to the editors directly and ask them any questions you might have. But without further ado, thank you both for your time today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, look forward to seeing you both in the future. Congratulations on your work and on the future of book 2.0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.